the work we're doing right now in my group. Oh, sorry, decided to turn itself off. It'll turn itself on sooner or later. So as Helena was saying, there is this abundance of sensors on the market, and a lot of them are doing the same thing. They're measuring something, and then we're supposed to understand ourselves based on this measurement that is simplifying quite a lot of who we are. And they're also focusing a lot on, in particular on, on the sensing. And I was doing some work on that, and I was looking at affective interaction, and I was unhappy with that kind of reductionist position that it's okay to reduce people to something that we can measure, and then we just tell them what they're experiencing or what they should be experiencing. So I was looking for theories, and Helena asked us to tell you what the theories that we were inspired by are, and then tell you about a couple of our projects that are based on those theories. So the first one I found was Sheets Johnston. And she has written this wonderful work. She's a choreographer and a dancer who then turned to be a biologist, an evolutionary biologist, and a philosopher. And so she's written about this for a long time. And one of the important things she says is that without the readiness to act in a certain way, and without certain corporal tonicities, a certain feeling would not and indeed could not be felt, and a certain action would not and indeed could not be taken, since the postural dynamic of the body are what make the feeling and the action possible. Okay, did you get that, or was it too complicated? Okay, what she's saying, in short, is that movement is the basis of everything, and movement and emotion is just this tightly coupled. And so if we're going to design anything to do with experiences, we better start with the body, because that's where we start. That's what we are fundamentally. Language is secondary. Movement and body comes first, right? And so this, to me, opened up a design venue where you go like, oh, so it's not only about measuring the body and then telling you about it, it's also that by doing certain movements, you will be engaged in the interaction in interesting ways, because movements will be the basis of some of those activities. So that was really important. And then it took a while, and then finally, I, as some of my fellow comrades had discovered way earlier than me, had a look at Schusterman's work, and he came actually to CHI 2 years ago and gave a talk. And he's since then tried to write about what some aesthetics, the aesthetics of the body, what that could mean to interaction design. And he says, you just have to remember that the body is our indispensable tool of tools, the necessary medium of our being, perception, action, and self-presentation in the world. And so we need to explore those fundamental features of our embodied ways of engaging with the world and transforming it through action and construction. And only then will we be able to provide more rewarding and pleasurable experiences with our technologies. Okay, so this was also extremely important to me. And what I take this to mean is that we can actually change our bodily ways of being in the world. We can improve on ourselves. We can become more somatically aware, and we can even master stuff. And if we're going to design technologies for this, we need to tap into that change. And so a lot of people get very pissed off with this because they find that it's normative and it's prescribing certain ways of being. Well, to me, it's, yeah, on the other hand, the whole school system has told you for years and years and years that you should be developing your language and your way of thinking. So why on earth wouldn't you also be developing your body and your bodily ways of being in the world? Because those are one. They are connected. You can't separate one from the other. Anyway, so I sent my student to Vanuatu, and we presented this work a couple of years ago, where we looked at a culture that got mobiles, the last country on earth to get mobiles. And the first thing you see is that it changes, of course, everything in the culture when they get mobiles. This is the first technological equipment that they got in this culture. And it really changed their ways of orienting their bodies in the world. And I think we've forgotten about that. But the mobiles and all of our technologies are changing not only the way we think and interact and communicate, but also the factual movements of our body. So we have a huge responsibility. And as a colleague of mine points out, even our animals are wearing technologies these days. So this is a study by Oskar Julin and Alexander Weilemann on hunting in Sweden, where people are putting GPS on their dogs, and then they feel like they actually understand something more about their dogs. So using a GPS, this hunter says that he learned so much more about the dog than he'd done in the previous 8 years of owning this particular dog. So that's really interesting, I think. So the two projects I want to talk about briefly. I know I should talk really fast. I am really fast, I promise. So one project, the most important thing is perhaps not the output of this project, but that we engage in bodily practices in a novel way, at least for me. So every week we will do a Feldenkrais exercise. And I don't know if you know what a Feldenkrais exercise is. If you don't, think about yoga, but it's not yoga, it's something else. And so this is what we do. We do this, and then we do the brainstorming and the development of technology. And we do this in various settings. We've done it out in nature, we've done it in compassionate ways, so that's actually me and Richard Schusterman doing breathing exercises together. And stuff that comes out of this is interactive carpets that help you get more in touch with your own body and your own understanding of yourself. Another project was actually presented here just in the session before. It's the Metaphone project, and to me this has told me perhaps more about bodily and aesthetic experiences than all of our more traditional HCI interaction design work. So this is an artist who's working with me, created this machine, the Metaphone machine, that takes data from your body and creates these wonderful drawings and really strange sound. So I'll just let you see the video a little bit of what it looks like. So here's the machine drawing on a piece of paper, and the machine shows its inner side. It's using biodata from participants to draw the painting. So you are part of the art piece. Your body is part of the art piece. And at first what people do typically with this is that they try to control it. They try to figure out how to influence the system. But what they end up doing in the end is accepting that it's actually the machine that influences them, and they get into this slightly creepy machine-dominated experience. So I think to me this has told me way more about how to design for these kinds of somatic experiences than anything else. So, aims and insights. I'm finishing now, Helena, I promise. I think it's really important that if we're going to design for bodily interactions, that we don't reduce the body to something that we measure and put a little reflection based on measurements, but instead reconnecting with this indispensable tool of tools, the necessary medium of our being, perception and action and self-presentation in the world, as Schusterman says. Or if you want to translate that to technological terms, shift from sensor-based design to actuator-focused design. Or if you want to talk about it in design terms, shifting from designing for the body to designing with the body and aesthetics. Done.
Comes the battery.
Okay.
Is that cool?
Training is in visual arts, but really since I became interested in interactive art, I've been very interested in design and the interaction side of it. And then also my thinking about art is very much from the pragmatist tradition, very aligned with Richard Schusterman, thinking about the function of art and how artworks function at a social, cultural and psychological level. So I've been making works in galleries for the past 12 years, but then the last 3 years actually doing a work in a hospital. So I'll just show you a quick news story about that project.
Computer games and videos
Yeah, turn that up a bit more.
used extensively in hospitals to try to distract
The sound? Sorry.
patients. Now doctors in Sydney are trying to take things one step further to help children manage pain and stress.
Thank you.
No one likes needles much. Regular hospital patient Adam Dees is no exception.
The day before he gets nervous and stuff and starts talking about not wanting to go and stuff like that because he knows it is going to hurt.
The 8-year-old from the New South Wales Central Coast has cerebral palsy. Injections of botulinum toxin help relax his muscles.
It's all right, lovey. Just the bandages.
The Bright Hearts app is targeted at children like Adam and uses biofeedback. If patients can relax and lower their heartbeat, they get to see more colourful images and hear a soothing soundtrack.
Is it too loud?
It's fine.
It's fine.
At least I'm used to swimming underwater.
Yeah, it's exactly like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
The digital artist who designed the app says using it correctly takes practice.
To control a game like this is very different than you would control a normal computer game, which is very much driven by excitement and kind of like get it.
Eventually, doctors want to use the app during medical procedures. They say it's more than a distraction.
The difference with biofeedback is, again, it's coming back to that issue of control, giving the children control over what's happening in their body.
This circle imagery is based on a work by the artist. In the future, the team hopes to also use imagery based on the children's own drawings. The doctors at Westmead also want to turn the game into a smartphone app, so kids like Adam Dees can start using it whenever they need to. Barbara Miller, ABC News, Sydney.
Okay, and this is a project I started last year called Theta Lab. Actually, we're using alpha brainwaves. But again, in this interaction, there's a noise sound, and as you can quiet your mind, close your eyes, and become very still, the alpha wave goes up, and that pushes the crackle sound down, and then it reveals these layers of drones that you hear in headphones, but also you feel under your body through these big transducers under these pieces of wood there. So it was the experience is structured as an experiment, and you commit to doing half an hour in this interaction, and you just play around what this space is.
Yeah. I felt like I could have been here for hours or 5 minutes.
Then after this experiment of half an hour, we would interview people. First we would get them to do a drawing in silence of some aspect of their experience, and then talk to that drawing afterwards, and these are some of the things they talked about.
Try to get, stay there, or as soon as you're aware of it, you're taken out of it, and that makes you kind of want to be able to go back to it or hold it, but that kind of just keeps you out here, control something, and that sends you out here, and then you kind of let go again, because you're just out here, and you let go. It feels like you go back.
Wondering, it's kind of chicken or the egg, am I causing these sounds, or are the sounds inducing me in different areas?
Going through this tunnel, and there's just a tunnel of light where these little kind of tentacles are coming out and kind of just pushing me along, and so this is where I am. They're all very fluorescent, like I'm in the deep sea, but when I'm getting pushed through, this is an expansive empty space in the centre there, so I feel like I'm just going through a tunnel, and so all the vibrations I was feeling, it was very rhythmic, so I kept on, it kind of felt like it was just gently pushing me through, but there was a sense of vast nothingness in the end.
So really, whether I'm doing this work in a hospital clinic or in an experimental gallery live art situation, what I'm really interested in here is how these interactions support experience of self-efficacy, where you sense that you have some way of controlling something you previously didn't think you could control, or a finer sense of connection with that. And then the other thing I'm really looking at is how we can make interactions that support qualities of attention. And so very, very still, subtle qualities of attention that reveal different things about ourselves. And then, so in these processes where I get people to talk about their experience, that's also another way psychologically of embedding that experience, that raw experience, into an experience through the telling of the story, and then the relating of that experience into other aspects of their lives. And so very looking at a kind of psychological dimension of the interaction. And I guess you could say that these are all very still bodies, but there's still movement. There's still body processes changing, so that's movement fundamentally. And then you can't actually say just because you're still, it's not a body or it's not movement. Yeah, that's all I'll say at this point.
I've got some card as well.
All right.
Perfect. All right. My name is Floyd Mueller. I'm going to be talking about designing exertion. I'm from the Exertion Games Lab. We are located in Australia. That's how the world looks for us. These are the people who do the actual work. Together we are called the Exertion Games Lab. We've got one vision, which is we want to inspire industry where games can and should be in 10 years' time. 2 mantras for that. Mantra number 1 is fail and fail often, because we believe through failure we can accelerate progress. And show don't tell. And that's the reason why we develop, and therefore show a lot of interactive prototyped experiences in order to make our argument rather than just write about it. So, and in that spirit, I'm going to show you a couple of projects that we've done. In particular, I'm going to focus on those that we are showing you at CHI that allows you to experience yourself. In one sentence, what we do is we work at the intersection between play, body, and technology, and we call that exertion games. We've got a following vision. It's based on the fact that we acknowledge that we used to play with digital content whenever we play with mouse and keyboard. And what we have now is that we are playing with the digital using our bodies through systems such as the Kinect and the Wii. But what we rather really want is experience our bodies as digital play. And I'm going to show you a couple of the students' games that we developed that kind of exemplifies this vision. First one is Identity, that you can see in Interactivity later today, and also in the Exertion Game Design session on Wednesday. It's a game that uses Sony Move controllers, but without a screen. And if I, as a player, move my Sony Move controller, it lights up based on the movement. But the other players, it just replicates my light across their controllers. So if all 3 of us move in sync, then it's really hard for the outside player on the right to determine who is actually controlling the movement. And that's the whole game. He's trying to figure out who is controlling the movement. And this is one example for us of how we experience our own bodies as digital play. Another way for you to experience your body as digital play is the Luma helmet, which we show at Interactivity. It's an interactive helmet that has sensors embedded that light up 104 individually controlled LEDs in order to facilitate self-expression for cyclists, but also an opportunity for play, and can even increase safety by encouraging to wear more safety gear. And please come to Interactivity. We've got a professional bike stunt rider there who's going to show you the Luma helmet. Another project I'm really excited about is Sweat Atoms. It's in the 3D printing and fabrication session on Thursday, where Rohit bought a whole bunch of 3D printers and then installed it in people's homes. Then he measured how much physical activity they do during the day in order to print every evening a little souvenir for them that represents their physical activity. But to understand how having this tangible representation of their bodily actions affects how they see their own body. And he's taken this further and presents Tasty Beats at Interactivity, which is a personalized sports drink machine that creates a sports drink based on how intense your physical exercise was beforehand, and creates this spectacle, this fluid spectacle inspired by bartenders that matches the process of sweating when you exercise, in order to understand again how it affects how we see our own bodies. And what he's currently doing is Sweat Atoms, where he actually measures your physical activity and then prints chocolate personalized chocolate based on that data that you then eat. You eat your own data in order to understand how this relationship changes your own understanding of your body and of your physical activity of your body. Last thing I want to mention is tomorrow at the special interest group at 4, we want to talk more about technology and sports. And in order to, and instead of doing that in a conference room, we thought, why don't we go outside? So we meet at 4, and then we're going to go down to the waterfront, and we're actually going to go jogging. Everybody's welcome. All jogging levels are catered for. And we're going to talk about technology, wear technology, and talk about HCI in sports in order to really understand our active human bodies. And that was me. I wanted to talk to you about designing exertion and our vision of experiencing our bodies as digital play. My name is Floyd Mueller. Thank you very much.
So I'm Catherine Isbister, and I'm from New York University. This is my lab, and it's primarily a technology lab, but the purpose is to bring people from design and the arts and other allied fields into working with engineers. So we do a lot of playing with technology, and we have a very playful, creative space. So one thing that I think is really sad about our bodies and technology is basically that we've inadvertently carried this paradigm from these machines, where we're really just eyes and fingers, out into the world with us as we've designed devices that are supposed to be taken out into the world and yet require us to do that same kind of engagement as if we didn't have feet and bodies and so forth, and that have the side effect of isolating us from one another, at least those of us who are co-present. So I think it's a great way to have intimacy across distance, but not so great for the bodies in a social space together. So in my group, we're really interested in unpacking what are these hidden assumptions that we're taking along with us from desktop and sort of productivity technology, and trying to reconfigure what's happening. So I'll give you several examples. One of them is a dance game that we created. So there are a lot of commercial dance games, but they have some assumptions embedded in them still from that world, one of which is that you tend to stare at a screen a lot when you're playing the game. And when you think about what social dancing is like and why it's exciting, part of why it's exciting is because you're looking at each other and you're getting into deep social synchrony and emotional synchrony with people, you're flirting, you're checking out relationships with one another, there's very complex things going on. So we created a game called Yeah Move, which will be discussed a little bit in that Wednesday panel, or in Wednesday paper, which sort of broke apart assumptions. And we did use mobile phones, but we used them in a really different way. So instead of having people having to ever interact with their fingers with the phone on the screen, we strapped the phones to people's wrists, and we use them basically just for the accelerometer and for transmission of data. And we used a screen to post data so that everyone in the room could actually see what was going on. Then, instead of making people copy prefab moves, we let people completely improvise moves together, and we just tracked synchrony. So I'll show you a little bit of a video of what this looks like. Turn the sound up. Okay, that's kind of a nice little. So what happens with this game is, and we use an MC, we use a DJ, we kind of built it on the model of B-boy dance battles, is there's a lot more flexibility in the system for people to synchronize with each other, to perform at the level they're comfortable with. Your score is based on how well you sync with your partner, so it's not an individual competition, it's a pair versus pair competition. And you can see you can pretty much do almost any move you want to, as long as you do it in sync well with your partner. So what that does is it allows people to really focus on their synchrony with one another and to create movements that work for both people. And you can see in the pairings, this was at a festival, it was an IndieCade finalist in 2012. people just have so much fun thinking up moves together, and you can't really anticipate before you play this game what kind of move you're going to make, because it has to do with who your partner is. So we had everyone from a soccer mom and her kid wander by to somebody who actually was a professional dancer and was out and about with her friend. So there's the soccer mom and her kid. Anyway, so lessons we learned from this game were flexibility for improvisation in the system, and also unpacking which sensors and feedback systems we use, and creating a mashup of devices to better augment what's going on here. Okay, so that's one project. The other one I want to briefly mention is a project that was about trying to reimagine surveillance cameras as a public utility instead of a creepy Big Brother thing, and trying to figure out, is there any way people could repurpose surveillance cameras to activate being social with one another in space? And so we made a game for this museum. I'll just briefly show you a little video of it. Essentially what you do is you run around together to wipe pixels off of a screen, and when you succeed in wiping enough pixels off, you get to pose in a little digital tableau, and then you can take those screenshots away with you. What's interesting about this system is it uses motion flow software that was developed by Bell Labs that doesn't really distinguish between individuals. So unlike a Kinect, where you have to couple with the system and then maintain this contact with the system, oh, it's sensing me, it's still sensing me, this system doesn't care, it just sees blobs of motion. And so anyone can pile into the interaction. There's no sense that I'm interrupting the flow of what you're doing. And it created a lot more intergroup collaboration and coordination. So that's another example of just backing away from some of the assumptions in technology, like, oh, well, I have to tightly couple one person to the system and sense them really, really well. That may be actually impeding interesting things that happen among bodies. And then the last project I briefly want to touch on is inspired by identity work that takes place in games. So anybody who's ever played a game and created an avatar knows you can create an alternative self in those worlds. This is an image from a series that was posted in the New York Times a few years ago by a really wonderful photographer, sort of exploring people's avatars and their selves. So my artist in residence in the lab, Kaho Abe, wanted to create a game that took this into the physical world. And so the project is called Costumes as Game Controllers. And the idea is, if you think about things like cosplay, can you put components on your body that help you play the game, but also sort of transform who you are socially? And this is Kaho and I playing in the system that she created. She created a fabric dome that you could project onto to sort of create this interesting staged environment within which you're operating. That's also a really interesting spectacle. And one of us wears a gauntlet and the other one wears a backpack. And they're both powered by mobile phones. And we actually also wear little gloves. And in order to play, I, wearing the backpack, I have to charge myself up in a pool of light. And then I have to hold hands with Kaho, and then she gets my charge. And so meanwhile, she's shooting with her gauntlet. She's got like a laser built into it, and she's shooting things in that projected world. And I just want to say one funny thing about that, which is that my daughter played this game at the play test at the art gallery where we showed it, and she played with a little boy. There happened to be a bunch of kids there. After she played, that was her, she said, "Mommy, I think I have a crush on that boy." And I was like, oh my gosh, it was the hand-holding that did it, right? So it just kind of brings it full circle, right? That like you could actually craft technological experiences instead of just being really bounded by this. Making some simple interventions that work with the body and work between bodies could cause really interesting things to happen. And that's it.
Don't know how that did.
Okay, so I'm Stuart Reeves, and I'm from the Mixed Reality Lab, which is in the School of Computer Science at the University of Nottingham. And I'm going to be sort of giving a couple of examples of something I haven't really touched on quite yet, which I've tried to call here the performing social body. So I have to apologise in advance for the slightly shambolic nature of my presentation, but it was kind of a little bit last minute, so please bear with me. Okay, so I want to give two different examples. The first one is a project called FlyPad, which was happened quite a while ago at the University of Nottingham, but due to various sort of problems, it extended over a long sort of period of time. So basically, Flypad is a interactive exhibit which is or was situated in this building in West Bromwich in the UK. And West Bromwich is a very kind of it's quite sort of deprived old sort of market town in Britain. And there was this project to build this new art centre that happened there. And as part of that, we were approached along with some artists, Blast Theory, to develop one of the many kind of interactive exhibits that happened to be is going to be deployed in this space. As you can see, the building is sort of maybe unattractive, or maybe it is attractive. I'm not quite sure. It's kind of repulsive and beautiful at the same time. So the Guardian didn't like it very much at all when they reviewed it. This is just a little picture of Flypad itself and the exhibit. So what you can see, I'll show a schematic diagram that shows it a bit better. And what you can see is there's a kind of big ramp, and the visitors to this art centre come along this ramp, which sort of winds the whole course of the building. You can see that there's a bunch of terminals. It's maybe a little bit difficult to see. You'll see in a video in a short time. There's a bunch of terminals, and there's a kind of footpad in front of each terminal, and you can use the footpad to control the game. And all the terminals are connected together. And these sort of terminals exist on this ramp, and this ramp is suspended in space. There's this kind of big atrium underneath it, where as you'll see, the players are actually sort of playing with the space. I just played this video. This kind of just shows you what the game is actually like. So just let this run. So that's the public building. So it's an augmented reality game, I should say. Okay, so that video is produced by Blast Theory. That's why it actually looks really nice. It wasn't made by us at all. This is a sort of schematic sort of overview of what this space looks like, and it kind of draws attention to the stuff I'm particularly interested in highlighting with this. So, as you can see from the video, the game here involves a lot of bodily action. So players walk up and they step on these footpads and they jump around to kind of boost their avatar around. And so on. And the kind of the sort of thing I just want to note here very briefly is that the designers thought about this very carefully, about how this bodily action would appear in the atrium when the visitors are arriving into this space. They would see these people jumping around and to kind of have a sense of intrigue about what is this that they're doing, but not actually necessarily see what the game that they're actually playing with is. So that's quite important, and that's kind of one of the sort of things I wanted to mention about spectatorship, which I'll kind of mention later in a moment. So just to give you some idea of what it kind of looked like, here's just some videos of some of the visitors playing. So they kind of came along in kind of clustered groups. They kind of jumped on the pads and kind of sort of went across them and went from terminal to terminal. Some of them stood back and watched others, and then to kind of swap over and so on. So that just gives you kind of rough sort of flavour about what it's about. How long have I got, by the way? So am I out? Oh. Okay. Well, I'll go over this example very quickly. So the opposite end of the scale, the other example I want to look at is that of musicians using various sorts of interfaces to interact with music and produce music. So the two examples are Michel, I can't pronounce his surname, so I won't try to, but he actually gave a performance at CHI in 2005. He uses these things called hands to navigate a kind of soundscape and produce music. So again, it's kind of producing music through very visible bodily action. The other example is Pamela Z, who's another musician, and she's actually a singer, classically trained singer, and she uses kind of, as you can see, armbands to kind of manipulate sound physically with her body that accompanies her while she's singing, and also she uses that to kind of manipulate her voice too. So just what I want to leave you with is a bunch of different challenges which I see in this space. So on the one side we've got FlyPad, which is like a first time through thing. So visitors come up and they have this bodily experience, but they need to understand what they're doing the first time, and they need to actually do it the first time. And at the other end of the scale, we've got this kind of more practiced bodily interaction, where these people have, like, I think Michelle's used this instrument for like 30 years, you know, the same way that a pianist or another kind of musician would practice something intensively. And just in closing, there's a whole bunch of sort of issues I thought were kind of really interesting challenges for this space when we're thinking about design. So on the left side we have kind of the immediacy of bodily interaction, so with FlyPad, so how we actually get people to engage physically with these things straight away, and also how self-explicating they are. They have to be very understandable, and part of that was through kind of it being visible to spectators, so other people could see what to do in a very kind of simple way and jump on the pads themselves. At the other end of things, we have kind of depth of bodily interaction, so something that is kind of a slow reveal effectively to the performer, so they learn how to use the thing many, many years, and kind of it has a revelatory effect to it. And then a whole bunch of other issues that come up with these sorts of things. So the presence of spectators is really important for all of those things, how legible some action is, how people sort of make sense of it, and also this kind of final point about the body being kind of an inherently social thing. So that's the main sort of thing I wanted to get across. So thank you.